Welcome to Pond. My name is Mitch Stein. I'm the co-founder, CEO, and Chief Impact Officer. We want to make tech work for good. So we're highlighting and uplifting the critical parts of the impact technology ecosystem through human conversations with the leaders and shapers of the industry. Let's jump in.
Meet Jessica Santana. To sum Jessica up in one word, an inspiration. She grew up seeing her community systemically underestimated and made it her life's work to change those systems with technology.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining us, and would love to just kick off by having you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Santana. I'm co-founder and CEO of American Tech. American Tech is an early pipeline technology talent accelerator, decreasing the racial wealth gap in underestimated communities by providing young people with the tools and resources that ultimately lead them to degrees and careers in technology.
Awesome. And there has to be a good story there and how you got involved in this awesome cause. Like, what, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about what life experiences moved you to found this organization?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a first generation college graduate. I am a Puerto Rican woman from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in East New York my entire life. And, I'm the proud product of New York City public schools. And ultimately, once I finished my higher education, I started my career in the private sector along with my co-founder, Evan, who is also from Brooklyn, who is also from East New York. And we realized at the time while we were working in technology that there were so many job opportunities in the companies that we were in, and yet so many people who didn't look like us that were occupying these kinds of positions. And when we talked about talent, from the recruitment standpoint, from the retention standpoint, and from the promotion standpoint, it was very much from a deficit mindset. And we also knew that our experiences growing up in New York City public schools did not lend us the opportunity to get into these kinds of spaces of innovation in the first place. And so we really believe that the young people, who we aim to serve now, just were not being met with the kinds of opportunities they needed to set them up in the future to compete for these kinds of opportunities. And so in 2014, we met at a Starbucks. We were talking about our frustrations with the lack of, equity and inclusion in the tech industry. And rather than being upset about the current situation, we decided to, be a part of the movement to change things. So this really came from a place of passion, a place of wanting to serve. It was a passion project, and it just took on a life of its own. And I ended up leaving my job about 6 months after the launch of our pilot. And it wasn't expected. It wasn't something we planned. We ended up getting a $50,000 grant from an education incubator that basically allowed me to leave my job in order to take the work on full time. But it's been a great now going on 7 years doing this work. And we've seen tremendous success with the young people in our programs. And our hope is just that, from a very humble beginnings and very humble founding story, that we continue to grow as an organization to continue to impact students, not only in New York City now, but all across the country.
Wonderful. And I know you alluded to how things have evolved since you got started. It sounds like the core mission is still very much the same, but has your vision or sort of expectation of where this could go, has this changed, or did you know all along, like, this is really gonna, be a national thing?
Truthfully, no. I think that when we first started, we had a really big vision for the young people of Brooklyn specifically, because there was, the introduction of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, and we were from Brooklyn, and we just wanted to provide students with opportunities to know that they can participate in technology right in their own backyards. And then as time has passed and we got that first $50,000 grant, I think that was an indicator to us that the problem that we were trying to solve for was massive. And while we, started with just, wanting to serve students in Brooklyn, we also started seeing that money was coming our way, and there were students across New York City that were applying to our programs. Then there were organizations that were reaching out in our general inbox, from places like Kentucky and Wisconsin and Chicago, trying to figure out how we can get our programs to them. And, so I think we were getting indicators, during the early stages that there was a demand for the work that we were doing, but we were very intentional about growth. And we actually didn't expand to Los Angeles until 5 years after the founding of the organization, because we wanted to make sure that the work that we were doing was with integrity. We wanted to have some proof points before going into communities that we didn't belong to, that Evan and I were not from, and create more harm. Because I think what ends up happening is you have all the good intentions to, bring programs to communities, but if those communities are not equipped with local leaders who understand the problems that are unique to them, then you essentially end up in a space where you might do more harm than good. And so we were super intentional about that growth. And, we started with just 20 students, and now we've grown to serve more than 3,000 students across New York and LA since 2014. And it's been quite a journey. Quite a journey.
I've got chills with like every part of the story you're telling. It's so exciting. It's just so inspiring to people. I think we hear so many stories too about like the tech startups, right? That like make it big and blow up. But this is an impact organization having incredible impact on people, and like your not little, but your dream and what at the time was a humble beginning is impacting thousands of people. Like, just congratulations. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
And I guess switching gears a little bit, as there's so many organizations out there doing great work, how do you feel like America on Tech is differentiated? It's obviously not competitive, but I'd just be curious how you think about yourselves differently than other organizations that are helping with the racial gap in technology in the technology sector.
Yeah, for sure. So there's no deficit of organizations who are working to address the issues around creating pathways for underestimated students in innovation. But I think that there are a lot of things that make America on Tech unique in comparison to other organizations. It really comes down to our model and our approach and our theory of change. So the first thing I'll say is you are correct in that you can't have competition. Just in New York City alone, there are 1.1 million students in the public school system. So as a result of there being 1.1 million students in the New York City school system, no organization alone is actually serving any of those students altogether. And so I think that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is that the thing that makes us unique is one, we are free. So we are tuition free. We don't charge students or families for participation in our programs. We recognize that organizations that charge for entry can impose a barrier to entry for students who we want to work with. All of our students are low-income students of color, who majority of them are living in qualified opportunity zones or adjacent to qualified opportunity zones. The schools that we work with average at about 75% or more eligible for free or reduced lunch. And so adding, the barrier to entry with paying for admission when sometimes they're trying to figure out how to put food on their table is just not something that we advocate for. So we fundraise all the money for our programs and keep them free. The second thing that I think makes us unique is that we have a curriculum that's very industry aligned and very project based. And so we are America on Tech because we are more than just a coding program. Most of the organizations trying to address the gender gap or the racial gap in technology are focused on coding and careers in software engineering, as opposed to our suite of programs focused on web development, user experience design. We're rolling out a digital marketing fellowship. And so for us, we define technology as very broad, as very it's very much about like the ecosystem that makes technology work, as opposed to like the one skill of being a really cool engineer, because we know that so many of our students have such creative sides to them that another field that pays just as much as engineering could very much work for them. The third thing that I think really makes us unique is we have a social enterprise model that's attached to America on Tech, where students who've graduated from our programs, they actually have an opportunity to come back to be employees of America on Tech and serve as classroom mentors and peer assistants. So right now we have about 24 alums who are scattered throughout the different cohorts of the program, and they're working with the current students after they've now graduated from the program. And I think we're not just an organization that's focused on technology skills development. We do place in internships and we do place in jobs. And so for us, it's really about marrying skills with employment opportunities and professional experiences that ultimately lead them to careers in the industry, that many of the organizations that I think people would try and compare us to are more just focused on skills development and exposure.
That's awesome. And I know you're growing, as you mentioned, you're hiring folks even out of your own alumni base, which is amazing. As you kind of grow your team and bring people on board, how do you help maintain the culture and the spirit from that original Starbucks meeting between you and Evan? What do you look for in people, or what do you try to instill in them from a culture perspective?
To be honest with you, I don't know that we have like a science, right? I think, the first thing that we vet for in any part of our hiring process is this person passionate about the work and the mission. And the reason why that is important is because I truly believe that skills are something you can teach. If you vet someone who has a growth mindset, you cannot teach passion for the work. You cannot teach someone to care about equity and inclusion in technology, or addressing the racial wealth gap, right? It's something that has to be inherently embedded in them, whether through a lived experience or whether them seeing themselves as part of the solution to solving the problem. And so for us, it's vetting for passion in the very, very beginning of the hiring process. I also think that, part of the culture that we're trying to build at America on Tech is one that is embedded in anti-racist practices, anti-oppressive practices, and then also making sure that we're not only putting out high quality programs for our students, but knowing that we have a staff that is mostly women and mostly people of color, understanding that the same issues that our students are facing, our staff is also facing, right? So I'll give you an example, when the murder of George Floyd happened back in, the June timeframe, the May timeframe of 2020, we recognized that we were hosting, a series of town halls for our students to make sure that we were providing them with a safe space, but at the same time told our staff members to care for themselves during this time, request time off if they needed, and just to take care of their mental health. Because while we might not be able to pay you as much as Google, what at least we can give you is time to grieve and time to, really interact with the life cycle of grief and how that manifests in your life due to the mass killings of Black and Latinx people across the country. And so I think for us, it's really trying to build a culture around that. And then also knowing that we should be accountable for one another, and we should have a growth mindset as it comes to disrupting systems. So we've developed and integrated these things called quarterly disruption meetings, where our staff come together, they really think about the systems that have just happened over the past quarter, and then we come in and we address those systems immediately and we change them. And that was something that I cannot take credit for. It was a staff member named Ishikar who actually brought that to light and wanted to implement it. So I think for us, it's just about knowing that even though the system might not feel broken, it's one that we're still consistently addressing, because we're trying to maximize for efficiency. As an impact organization, we're always making the decision between like efficiency and community, but we'll never prioritize efficiency over community. And so delicate balance for that when it comes to culture. And maybe the last thing I'll say is just knowing that it's important to be transparent right now and to model leadership. So in my mind, the way that culture can happen and like sprout through an organization is by me and my co-founder modeling leadership. I remember one time, like last year specifically, I canceled a meeting on a Monday because I really needed a mental health day. And a part of that calendar invite was, some external stakeholders, as well as one of our program managers who was going to be on the meeting. And she said, when I sent the email saying that I was requesting a mental health day, it led her to believe that she had the permission to do the same. And so I think it's about modeling leadership as well that can determine how culture forms, but we're still trying to figure it out. I'm not going to say we have a science, but those are some of the things that I think about immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, everything you said has the same theme in my mind. Is everything is about growth. Anti-racism is about growth. Mental health is about growth. Tolerance, transparency, like all those things are being brave enough to grow, brave enough to let other people grow. And by the way, when you talk about efficiency, there's no efficiency in growth, right? It's like it happens because it happens, and the hard fought victories are the ones that have the best and most lasting outcomes. That's what you're all in it for. So you nailed it. I think your team must feel really lucky to have you. And I'm so grateful that they had that space and understanding in the past year, because it's just been brutal for people. So kudos on that. And that may be tied into my next question, which I'm sure you have an endless list of like touching moments and things that make this job exciting for you. But I don't know if you can share one or maybe two if you need to pick two, but a moment with a student or something that really touched you and like you think back on and keeps you going when you have a hard day. It's just something that has really inspired you from the work.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many moments. So many moments. Can I pick two? I'll tell you two. My first one is with a student named Jessie Sarmiento. She is a Latina from Queens, attended the Young Women's Leadership School of Astoria, and she's done multiple programs with America on Tech, and to the point where she became a peer mentor, and now she's in college. But I think the first thing that I can think about was, we had a gala in 2019 for our Innovators and Disruptors Awards, which is basically like the Oscars of technology. And she gave a speech during that ceremony that was extremely moving, and I like cried. She said that prior to America on Tech, she was the girl who just sat in the back of the classroom, didn't really have an outlook for what was possible for her. And now she is like exercising her agency, and she realized she's met her, her passion, and, that we connected her with so many opportunities, and she was able to do an internship with one of our corporate partners upon graduating from the program. And so I think of students like her that, are from communities in Queens that have been overlooked, and schools in Queens that have been overlooked. And to see that she has seen our organization as a way to empower herself really means a lot. And I think the other one is with a young man. His name is Rodolfo, and he is from the Bronx, and he is just fantastic. He's Dominican. And recently I read a spotlight of him on our Instagram, where he said that prior to America on Tech, he was just like a silly kid who was pumping his fist at Fortnite. And now through our program, he's been able to obtain a 3-year apprenticeship with Amazon Web Services, and he's, there in their technology department. And, to know that you were once a student who just saw your potential as like fist pumping at Fortnite, and now you're working for one of the largest technology companies in the world, and we were able to do that for you really means a lot. And I think more stories like that come around, and I think just general thank you emails from students are the things that keep me going on the days where this work is hard.
No, you gotta hold on to those things. So it's good to keep those top of mind. I know you've mentioned a lot about how well your internships work and getting folks the exposure they need and the skills and the actual placement. One thing that I imagine, as someone who's had a lot of interns all in the finance world, but I know there's a lot of similarities with tech. What would your advice be to companies, even ones that maybe aren't working with America on Tech or in other cities that you're not in? How can they make their internship programs more inclusive and equitable? What are some concrete steps they can start taking before they've got the benefit of working with your team?
I know you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but at least try and put rims on it. And the reason why I say that is because I really do believe that everyone believes in the promise and potential of young people. Like, if you don't believe in the promise and potential of young people, like, maybe that's a larger discussion, but I fundamentally believe that is like a non-negotiable across the entire world, that you have to believe in the promise and potential of young people. And I think that if you believe in that, then you believe that you should play an active role in creating conditions where they can engage in things that they wouldn't traditionally be able to engage in. And because you feel responsible for that, is thinking about, what are the things that I'm currently doing, or what current things exist in the company that don't allow people to fulfill their potential, and be okay with either enhancing, your relationships to bring more people through the doors that look like the students who are in America on Tech programs, in order for them to participate. And I would also say, be able to distinguish between your ability to be authentic and your ability to be transparent, because transparency is saying, we really want a more diverse range of students, in our internship program. But authenticity is saying we want these students here, but we also know that we have systems that are broken internally that we need to fix in order for them to be here and thrive and succeed. And I think having that shift in mindset for companies is going to be really important for them to try and revamp their internship programs to be more inclusive and more equitable.
Yeah, it's almost like the authenticity. It's kind of like you got to be willing to say what you want to change. If you just want to say we're for diversity, but not acknowledge like, all right, well, what's been wrong in the past that you want to change? How do you ever progress, right? You got to be willing to say, we're an anti-racist organization. We've experienced white dominant culture, and we're committed to trying to change that. Those are really hard things for people to say, but that creates a safe space for people. On top of that, like aside from just explaining how they could implement a more inclusive and diverse internship program, like why should they be focused on that? What are we missing out on by having a predominantly white internship class or group in tech? Like what are the opportunities that we're not seeing because of that?
It is unimpeachable. There's so many studies at this point. It's unimpeachable. Like diversity and range of diversity brings a lot of business value, right? Lived experiences from different backgrounds, from cultural perspectives can just lead to better innovation on teams. And I think it's hard for people to see that when it's not quantifiable and maybe they don't have access to the reports that we read on a daily basis to get us to understand that diversity leads to better business outcomes that don't move them to action. But I think the thing you miss out on is an opportunity to collaborate with people who are different from you, that can provide you a different perspective, that can lead to better solutions for the problems you're trying to solve internally at your organization. I think the other thing you miss out on is just, I think that diversity and inclusion has been framed as this charitable thing. Like it's something that we do because it's the right thing to do. But I actually think that when it comes to race and ethnicity, it's not just about what the students who, are Black and brown gain by these experiences, right? It's also about like what white people gain as well, right? And so for me, I think white people miss out on the ability to work with really talented people and learn from them. So it is a cross-cultural experience that you miss out on. So in my mind, that's the second thing. And I think the third thing that you miss out on is the ability to really understand that no one is really free until everyone is free. And we have to shift our mindset from, I want you here, but then I'm going to lose out on this, because I think that's part of like the issue where it's like, there's a scarcity mindset around diversity, and that if we give you an opportunity, then we're taking away an opportunity from one of our own, which feels really inappropriate and like really embedded in just a scarcity mindset. And I think that if we really saw each and every one of our liberations, right, as part of each other's liberation, that we actually set ourselves up for a national talent strategy that is inclusive of everyone and not just leave certain people behind. And so in my mind, I think those are the three things that we miss out on when we don't have diverse teams and we don't operate with equity in mind when it comes to hiring and recruiting.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone earlier this week, and I kind of quipped a little bit sarcastically, but I actually, in hindsight, think it's very true. Like, if your head of HR is not also your head of DEI, what exactly is the point? Like, what could be more important to your people strategy, right? It's everything you just said. And I guess within your own organization, taking a step back into how you've built and grown things and been able to use technology in your own operations, can you just talk us through a little bit about the importance of tech to you as an impact organization? I think that's something that's tends to get underestimated by a lot of impact organizations or nonprofits. Even though we don't like that term. How would you explain to them how important tech is to you, how you've leveraged it, how it is a living, breathing thing within the organization?
Well, aside from being a technology education organization, I also just believe in distributed work and being able to do things from any and everywhere, and flexibility and scalable systems. And I think for us, like when the pandemic hit, it was such a testament to like the systems we had already built, that within 48 hours we were already online. Well, we had nonprofits all over New York and LA that couldn't figure out what they were going to do in order to deliver their services. And American Tech had no disruptions to their services over the last year because of the fact that we already operated as a tech-enabled organization. And so for us, every time we're thinking about a piece of technology is, how can we use this piece of technology in a way that it will scale? That's the first thing that we ask ourselves, because if we use this now, we want to be able, if we use it now for 50 students, we want to be able to use the same thing for hundreds of students and thousands of students eventually. And that's the first question. The second thing I'll say is technology helps you tell a better story about the students in your programs and your beneficiaries, right? If you leverage technology correctly, you can build data dashboards that can help you understand attrition, help you understand the experiences of students in your program, help you understand the intersectionality of the experiences of the students in the program. If you render data in a way that lets you see like how a Black student experiences your program, how a Latinx student experiences your program. I also think its technology allows for a sense of accountability, right? Like if you have a right piece of technology, you are able to institutionalize knowledge in a way that can live past an organization's successor. For me, like I'm always thinking about if I die tomorrow, right? For lack of a better word, is someone going to be able to pick this up and like just run with it based on, like just based on the fact that I am now gone, So I think that is what technology allows you to do. And last but not least, I think that with a shift to a greater remote workforce, people need that kind of flexibility in order to be able to do work from their phones, in order to be able to do work on the go, in order to be able to access things that they need from different kinds of devices. And so not just thinking about technology from, I'm sitting here on a laptop, but like how do you actually access things on mobile? So some of the things I'll say about America on Tech specifically is our content right now is on Google Classroom. That is accessible via phone, but that's also accessible via a laptop. Replit is the coding processor that we use, accessible via phone, accessible via laptop, accessible via tablet. We also obviously operate a lot of our systems on Google Drive. Now we're implementing our first Salesforce. And so for us, we've just been a tech-enabled organization from the start because we really believe in the cloud. I also think it's just the fact that I am a technologist by trade, that we prioritize these kinds of things. But I just think technology just enables better streamlining of operations in a way that if you were still paper-based or if you were still trying to do things in an old-fashioned way, you might not be making the best use of your resources or putting yourself in a position to set yourself up for success in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I see a lot of corollaries probably to students you encounter and other nonprofit leaders. And you've obviously are self-aware that you've got the benefit of a deep lived experience in the technology field. But for a lot of people, it's really either scary or just like, I don't know the right word for it, but it doesn't feel like it's for them because to your point, they haven't seen themselves portrayed or succeeding in those realms. So what would you say to other nonprofit leaders or students? Because I think the message is similar. If they don't have an interest in tech or they think it's not possible for them, what would you say?
Yeah. I would say that you're the one that you've been waiting for. Like we're the ones that we've been waiting for. And I know that technology feels a little bit inaccessible to communities, especially like the students in our organization and for nonprofit leaders. But I do believe that rather than seeing this as a challenge, like you can see this as an opportunity for growth. It's all about framing. And I would also say, like, if you really don't have the expertise and don't feel comfortable, you can always outsource it. And that at least goes to the nonprofit leaders. We can always just outsource the expertise and hire for that skill. But I think still, regardless, it should be a priority. And then for the students who are like looking for that kind of representation in order to give them the permission to be in the space, I would say that when you are living in communities where a lot of times the only professionals you know are the teachers in your classrooms, I think it's important for them to realize that they can then one day become the mentors that they are looking for, and really consider themselves as pioneers for a generation that's been left out. And I think that sometimes we look for representation, and we look for that to be the thing that gives us the permission. And I think with America on Tech students, I would want them to know that even though technology feels inaccessible to you, it is absolutely accessible to you. And by virtue of you being a part of this program, you create the conditions for it to be accessible for other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's so touching what you basically saw as an advantage you had. And it's something that most of us have that we don't, or a lot of us have that we don't appreciate. If you have access to technology or tech education, it's on you to make sure others have the same. And I just think that's the fact that you're instilling that from like day one of anyone in your program is just going to have those amazing butterfly effects as you go. And so I guess talking about butterfly effects 5 years from now, what is like dream state for Jessica, dream state for America on Tech? What's your greatest goal for 5 years from today?
5 years for Jessica. So on an individual level, I really just want to be able to reach equilibrium as a CEO. I feel like I always say like, oh, I have work-life balance, but honestly, it's probably like 30% life and then like 70% work right now. So I want to be able to achieve equilibrium. I believe that I deserve it. I also believe that, I am my best asset. And so any investments I make on myself is a guaranteed return. In terms of best version of America on Tech in 5 years is that we are fully staffed, we're fully operational, we are operating with so much room. We're operating at capacity, but also room to not be at capacity as well, or to have more capacity as well. And that we are serving students all across the United States of America, outside of our current regions, which are New York and LA. And then what I hope for the America on Tech students is that as our growing alumni base continues to grow and become more populous, is that they feel compelled to come back to our organization and volunteer and pave the way for the next generation of leaders. While I would love for them to be in the technology industry and obtain jobs there, and obviously that is the ultimate mission of what we do, I think a better testament to the impact that we have is that the students who graduated feel responsible for the next wave of techies to come in and actually be the instructors of our programs, be the mentors in our programs, and maybe one of them will become a donor of our program in the future.
And honestly, there's a burgeoning community of impact tech businesses that are using our platform, who are growing, and I see them posting on LinkedIn about hiring. So, we should do our best to get your organization this message in front of them, because to your point, like the helping the world path and the like tech job path don't have to be, in opposition. So I think opening the doors and eyes to ways to take that technology to also make the world a better place is a pretty cool alignment.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for chatting with us. I feel like we could probably talk for another hour. At least I would like to, learning a lot from all of your wisdom and successes over the past few years. So wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming by. Be sure to visit joinpond.com and jump in when you're ready.